I should have noticed the first warning the night Rylan touched my wrist and said, "Don't disappear on me." His voice was soft, almost pleading, yet there was a quiet command hidden underneath. That time I thought it was sweetness. I thought someone finally cared enough not to lose sight of me. I had always wanted to be seen, truly seen, and Rylan made me feel like I was the only light in his crowded mind. He asked me everything: what I ate, who I spoke to, what I thought about when the room was silent. His interest felt warm, like a blanket wrapping around my loneliness. I did not understand that warmth could also become a rope. I told him things no one else knew, and his eyes followed every word like he was memorizing it for later. When he smiled, it looked real. When he frowned, it looked like my fault. But I ignored those small shadows, believing the brightness was stronger. I told myself he cares. That's all. But even then, something inside me whispered that no one should care that much. Rylan began calling every morning before the sun came up. "I just want to hear your voice," he said. Sometimes he didn't even talk, just breathed softly, waiting for me to fill the silence. He said it calmed him. He said it kept him from thinking too much. I didn't ask what he meant by that, because I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Instead, I let him talk me into staying on the line while I prepared for the day. If I took too long to respond, he would say, "You're drifting again. Where are you going without me?" His tone always held a question that sounded like blame. I tried to sound cheerful, to prove I wasn't drifting anywhere. It felt easier to adapt than to argue. When I mentioned I had plans with Mira, he paused for too long before saying, "I don't like how she looks at you." I laughed, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. "She distracts you," he said. "I want us to stay connected. Don't you?" I nodded even though he couldn't see. I told myself it was normal. It was affection, nothing more. I didn't understand he was slowly claiming pieces of me. The first real argument happened over something small: my phone dying while I was out. When I returned home, Rylan was sitting outside my door, knees drawn to his chest, staring at the ground as if he'd been there for hours. He didn't look up when I approached. "I thought something happened," he muttered. His voice trembled, and guilt hit me like a stone. I tried to explain, but he shook his head. "No, you don't get it. When I couldn't reach you, my mind went dark." He stood up then, gripping my shoulders with shaking hands. "You can't leave me like that." His fear felt real, too real, and I hated myself for causing it. So I apologized, though I wasn't sure what I had done wrong. He softened instantly, pulling me against him. His breath was quick against my ear. "I just need to know you're safe," he whispered. "Promise you'll tell me where you go." I nodded again. "Promise." After he left, I stood in my living room, staring at my silent phone, wondering how one misplaced hour could unravel him so badly. I didn't see that it was my unraveling too. It wasn't long before Rylan started appearing everywhere. Outside my office, at the cafe I visited, even near the bus stop I used once a week. He always gave the same explanation: "I missed you." At first I smiled and let him walk me home. But the smiles grew tighter as the visits grew more frequent. Still, I didn't push back. I didn't want to hurt him. Whenever I hinted at needing space, he'd tilt his head and ask, "Space from what?" "From me." The question sounded innocent, but it carried a sharp edge that made me swallow my words. One evening I tried again. "Rylan, I just need time to think." His expression darkened so fast it shocked me. "Think about what? Why do you need to think?" His tone sounded like accusation, like betrayal. I opened my mouth, but he stepped closer. "You don't understand what you mean to me. I can't sleep when you're far. I can't breathe when I don't know where you are." I froze, unsure how to respond without triggering him. Finally I murmured, "Okay. Let's just walk." His face brightened immediately, as if the storm hadn't happened. But I couldn't forget the cloud behind his smile. The first time he used the word ours, it was during a quiet evening on my couch. We were watching a movie, though neither of us paid attention. Rylan kept studying me. his fingers tracing slow lines along my arm. "Everything feels safer when you're near," he said. "Like the world finally has a center." I laughed softly. "You make it sound like I'm some kind of anchor." He shook his head. "Not an anchor. A home." His voice trembled slightly, as if he was confessing a terrible secret. "I don't want anything taking you away from me. Not work. Not friends. Not anyone." I shifted slightly, but he pulled me back. "You're ours," he whispered, and the word made my skin tighten. "Ours," I repeated. Rylan nodded. "My heart and your heart. They're not separate anymore." He smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. Felt like a lock sliding into place. I wanted to correct him, to tell him I wasn't part of any hour. But he looked so fragile, so certain, that I stayed silent. I let him hold me, even as something inside me whispered that I had become less a person and more a possession. Rylan's control grew so slowly that I barely noticed the shift until it was already normal. He began picking my clothes for the day, claiming certain colors fit my energy better. If I chose something different, he'd frown and ask, "Why would you want to hide from me today?" When I denied it, he'd smile gently and say, "Then wear what I picked. I want to see you clearly." He said it like a compliment, but it felt more like surveillance. Conversations with others became another battlefield. Once, Mira called during dinner, and Rylan's eyes hardened as the phone rang. "Don't answer," he murmured. "Not tonight." When I hesitated, he added, "She drains you. I can hear it in your voice after you talk to her." I put the phone down, telling myself it wasn't worth an argument. Rylan rewarded me with a kiss on the forehead, whispering, "Good. You chose us." That word again, us, wrapped around my throat like a hand. And yet, every time I felt uneasy, he'd look at me with a softness that made doubt feel cruel. "I just want to protect what's mine," he'd say. And I wasn't sure anymore what parts of me still belonged to me. The gaslighting began with little contradictions. If I said we discussed something earlier, he'd tilt his head and say, "No, you're mixing things up again." If I mentioned he raised his voice, he'd respond, "I didn't. You're just sensitive today." First, I brushed it off. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I remembered wrong. But it happened so often that I started doubting my own thoughts. One evening, when I told him I felt overwhelmed, he clasped my hands and said, "You're imagining problems because you're afraid of how real this is." When I insisted something felt wrong, he sighed and replied, "You always twist things. I love you more than anyone ever has. Why isn't that enough?" His disappointment stung worse than anger. I found myself apologizing for things I wasn't even sure occurred. Over time, my memories felt blurry, like someone kept rearranging them in the dark. Rylan noticed every flicker of confusion and used it as proof I needed him. "See," he'd whisper, "you can't trust your mind when it spirals. But you can trust me." And it terrified me how comforting that sounded. Jealousy became the third shadow in our relationship. It followed us everywhere, invisible but heavy. If I laughed too loudly around someone else, Rylan's smile tightened. If someone greeted me warmly, he'd slip his arm around my waist, holding me too close. "People stare too much," he said one afternoon as we walked through a crowded market. "They think they can touch what's mine." I reminded him that no one was touching me, but he shook his head. "Their eyes touch. That's enough." Later that night, he confronted me about a harmless interaction with a stranger who asked for directions. "You didn't have to smile at him," Rylan said. "It was just polite," I protested. His eyes narrowed. "Polite looks a lot like interest." When I insisted I had no interest, he replied quietly, "Then show that same energy when you're with me." He sounded hurt, and guilt quickly swallowed my frustration. I promised him again that he was the only one I wanted. But the truth was, I wasn't allowed to want anyone else. Not even myself. The addiction between us was its own living thing. Every time I tried pulling back, Rylan would shift into softness. Gentle hands, quiet whispers, apologies that felt like silk. "I'm sorry," he'd murmur against my neck. I get scared. You're all I have. Those words reached a part of me that still believed I could save him. I thought if I loved him enough, he would stop drowning me. So I forgave him again and again, even when his affection felt like chains. Nights became the most confusing. Sometimes he held me so tightly I could barely breathe, whispering, "Don't leave me. Not even in your dreams." Other nights he sat awake, staring at me in the dark. I once woke to find him sitting at the edge of the bed, watching me with an unreadable expression. "You look peaceful when you sleep," he said. "Like you're somewhere I can't reach." His voice trembled with something between fear and anger. I didn't know how to respond, so I reached for him. He melted instantly, burying his face against me like a child seeking warmth. Somehow, I convinced myself that needing me so desperately was proof of love, not danger. The night everything shifted. The air between us felt strangely fragile. We were eating dinner when Rylan suddenly asked, "Do you talk to Mira behind my back?" The question came out of nowhere. I blinked. "No. We haven't spoken in weeks." His fork clattered against the plate. "You're lying." I stared at him, stunned. Why would I lie about that? Rylan leaned forward, eyes sharp and dark. "Because she's been asking questions." "I know she has." My chest tightened. "I haven't seen her." He shook his head slowly, as though disappointed in a child. "You always forget what you say. You told me last week that she messaged you. You said you were thinking of replying." Chill ran through me. I had never said that. "Rylan, I didn't." "You did." His voice was final, decisive. "You don't remember because you only pay attention when you want to." I felt the familiar spiral of doubt pulling me under. Maybe I had mentioned something small. Maybe I forgot. Maybe he was right. Rylan reached across the table, taking my hand. "It's okay. I forgive you." His smile was gentle, but his grip was bruising. "Just don't keep secrets from us again." After that night, Rylan insisted on reading my messages. He asked casually at first, "Let me see, just so I feel better," but the request transformed into expectation. If I hesitated, his expression tightened and he'd say, "Why are you protecting things from me?" I hated how quickly guilt crawled through me. So I handed him my phone, pretending it didn't bother me. He scrolled carefully, slowly, as if searching for a hidden version of me. "You type differently with other people," he murmured once. "Your tone changes." Frowned, confused. "I don't think it does." He smiled without warmth. "You never notice your shifts. But I notice everything." That sentence echoed inside me long after he gave the phone back. It wasn't a compliment. It was a warning. Sometimes he would repeat private messages I sent months ago, as if he had memorized every word. "You wrote to Mira that you felt trapped," he said one evening. "But you didn't write why." Froze. I didn't remember writing that. I didn't remember feeling that bold. "Did I?" I whispered. He nodded slowly. "Yes, but I forgive you. You were confused then." I said nothing, terrified by the possibility that he might be right. Days blurred into a dreamlike haze where reality shifted depending on Rylan's mood. If he was affectionate, the world felt safe. If he was tense, even silence became dangerous. One afternoon, he appeared at my door without warning. "You didn't answer my messages," he said. His voice held a calmness that was more frightening than rage. "My phone was in the other room," I replied. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I don't like repeating myself," he whispered. "When I call, you answer. When I ask, you respond." I swallowed hard. "Rylan, please. I'm not doing anything wrong." He sighed, brushing his thumb across my cheek. "I know. But you forget things. You drift. And I have to pull you back." I felt tears gathering, but he kissed my forehead before they could fall. "Let's not fight," he murmured. "Just stay close." His tenderness confused me more than his anger. It always did. I let him guide me to the couch, Let him hold me until the tension in his body finally eased. But even then, I could feel him listening to the rhythm of my breathing, as if checking for lies beneath each inhale. It became clear that Rylan did not love me. He depended on me. And dependence is a heavy thing to carry when the person holding onto you won't let go. One evening I tried to be honest. "Rylan, I think we need a break," I said softly. His entire body went still. "A break?" His voice cracked. "From what?" "From everything. Just some space." He stared at me, shaking his head slowly like he couldn't process the words. "No," he whispered. "No, that's not real. You don't want space. You're scared. Something is making you think like this." "Nothing is making me." "It's her, isn't it?" he snapped. "Mira. She poisoned your mind." "Rylan, stop." He stepped closer, gripping my arms. "You belong with me. You know that. You feel that." His eyes were terrified, wild. "Don't talk like you're leaving. I won't survive it." I felt my heart twisting painfully, fear mixed with pity. "Rylan, I'm not leaving," I whispered just to calm him. He relaxed instantly, shoulders dropping, relief flooding his face. "Good," he breathed. "Don't scare me like that again." And just like that, my attempt at escape died before it could begin. Sleep became my only refuge, but even that was stolen from me. Rylan began staying over more often, never announcing it, just appearing with an overnight bag and a tight smile. "I sleep better near you," he said. "You keep the nightmares away." But he brought new ones. Some nights, I woke to find him whispering my name repeatedly, his fingers tracing my face. "I'm making sure you're here," he'd say. "Sometimes I dream you vanish." Other nights, he'd ask questions while I hovered between sleep and waking. "Do you love me? Do you think of anyone else? Would you leave if you had the chance?" I'd mumble half-asleep answers, and he took each one as truth. The next day, he'd quote my exhausted words back to me. "You said you need me more than anything," he whispered once, touching my cheek reverently. "That means you won't abandon us." I didn't remember saying it, but arguing felt impossible. My dreams blurred with reality, and Rylan blurred with both. I woke each morning feeling less like myself, more like a version of me he had created, someone who couldn't breathe without him. The turning point came when I found the journal. It was tucked beneath Rylan's jacket, half hidden but not fully concealed, as if he wanted me to eventually discover it. Curiosity 1. Inside, page after page contained observations about me. My habits, my expressions, my tone during certain conversations. He documented which days I smiled more, which days I seemed distant, even the number of times I sighed during a phone call. One line froze me completely. "She thinks she's still herself. I have to help her understand she belongs to us." My hands trembled as I flipped through more pages. Some entries sounded like love letters, but others read like warnings, predictions, corrections. He wrote about moments that never happened, conversations I didn't remember, promises I didn't make. Seeing my life rewritten in his handwriting made something snap inside me. When he returned that evening, I confronted him. "What is this?" I demanded, holding the journal. His face didn't change. He simply stepped forward, gently closed the book and said, "It's proof of how much I pay attention." Then he smiled with unsettling calm. "You should be grateful. Most people never get loved like this." And suddenly I realized he believed that. After finding the journal, fear became a constant weight in my chest. I didn't know what frightened me more, the fact that Rylan had documented my life so obsessively, or the possibility that he truly believed his version of events. I tried to act normal, but every movement felt observed. Every breath felt recorded. When he visited the next day, I hid the journal under my bed. His eyes scanned the room immediately, as if counting the objects. "Something feels different," he muttered. "Did you clean?" "A little," I lied. He stepped close, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "Your heartbeat is fast," he whispered. "Did something happen while I was gone?" I forced a smile. Just tired. But he didn't look convinced. You know you can't keep secrets from me, he said gently. Secrets make distance. And distance hurts us both. His hand rested on my cheek, warm and tender, but I felt cold all over. I knew he would eventually search for the journal. I knew he would find it. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and told myself I needed a plan. But plans require clarity, and clarity was the one thing he had stolen from me. I reached out to Mira the next morning for the first time in months. My hands shook as I typed. Can we talk? I need help. I deleted the message twice before finally sending it. Rylin had conditioned me to fear even harmless choices. The moment the message delivered, panic crawled up my spine. What if he saw? What if he sensed it somehow? I tucked the phone under a pillow and tried to breathe. When Mira replied minutes later. Of course. What's going on? My eyes stung with relief. I typed a short answer. It's about Rylin. Before I could say more, a knock echoed through my apartment. My heart froze. It was too early for anyone else. I opened the door, and there he stood, smiling softly. I had a feeling you needed me, he said. I woke up and knew you were struggling. His intuition terrified me now more than his anger. He stepped inside without waiting for permission. Talk to me, he urged. Before your mind twists things again. My phone buzzed from under the pillow, and his eyes followed the sound. Slowly he turned toward me. Who's texting you this early? He asked. And my breath vanished. Rylin picked up the pillow before I could reach for it. He stared at the screen, his expression unreadable. Mira, he said quietly. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Why is she messaging you? I opened my mouth, but he held up his hand. No lies. His voice was empty, hollow. You told me you weren't speaking to her. I wasn't, I said quickly. I needed someone to talk to. He tilted his head slightly, as though studying a strange phenomenon. You have me. I know, but... No, he said softly. You don't know. He placed the phone on the table with unsettling gentleness. She's trying to take you away from us. I told you she would. His calmness made my stomach twist. I stepped back, but he followed, keeping his distance small. What did you tell her? Nothing, I whispered. I swear. He nodded slowly, but his eyes didn't match the gesture. I believe you, he murmured. But I don't trust her. He turned toward the door. We're going to fix this. Chill ran through me. Fix what? He smiled. The interruption. I'll talk to her. And the way he said it made my knees weaken. I grabbed his arm before he could leave. Rylin, please, don't go to her. He looked down at my hand, then back at me. Why not? Because it'll make things worse, I said. She doesn't understand our relationship. His eyes softened at that. Exactly. That's why I need to explain it to her. Explain what? Yes. That I'm not hurting you, he said. That you're safe with me. That you want to be with me. He sounded so certain that for a moment, I almost believed he could convince her. But then he added, and I'll make sure she stops confusing you. Fear surged through me. Rylin, please. I don't want you to talk to her. He paused, studying my trembling voice. Then he smiled faintly. You're scared. That's okay. You always get nervous when people interfere. He cupped my chin gently. Don't worry. I'll protect what we have. I shook my head desperately. You don't need to protect anything. I do, he corrected softly. Because you don't see the threats. But I do. He kissed my forehead, then pulled away. I'll be back soon. The door closed behind him, and the silence felt like a blade against my skin. The moment he left, I collapsed onto the floor, shaking. I grabbed my phone and called Mira repeatedly until she finally answered. Hey, what's going? Listen to me, I whispered harshly. Do not talk to Rylin. Do you understand? Don't open the door if he comes. Don't answer any message from him. Myra's voice sharpened instantly. What happened? Are you in danger? I swallowed hard. He knows we talked. He's coming to you. Why? She demanded. Because he thinks you're trying to separate us, I said. He's not thinking clearly. Mira went silent for a moment. Okay, she finally said. I'll lock my door. Should I call someone? The police. The idea terrified me. I knew involving authorities would set Relan off in ways I couldn't predict. No, I whispered. Not yet. Just stay inside. Please. She exhaled shakily. I will. But you need help. I know, I said, though the words felt foreign. I'll figure something out. After ending the call, I sat frozen on the floor, waiting for a sound. Any sound that would tell me Relan had returned. But the apartment stayed quiet. Too quiet. I didn't know which terrified me more. The silence or what he might be doing in it. Minutes dragged into an hour, and Relan still hadn't returned. Every sound outside made me jump. I paced the apartment, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to run, to leave everything behind, but another part knew he would find me. He always found me. I pulled the journal from under my bed, flipping through its pages again with trembling hands. The last entry was dated 2 days ago. She is drifting again. I need to pull her closer before she slips away. The words chilled me. I kept reading until I found a page I had skipped earlier, a page where he wrote predictions of what I would do next. If she reaches out for help, I will know. If she tries to run, I will stop her. If she lies, I will rewrite the truth for her. My throat tightened. It felt like he was inside my mind, rearranging my thoughts before they formed fully. Suddenly, a soft sound echoed from the hallway. Footsteps. I froze, clutching the journal against my chest. The footsteps grew louder, stopping right outside my door. There was a pause, a slow inhale, and then a gentle knock. It's me, Relan's voice called softly. Let me in. I opened the door only halfway, keeping the chain lock in place. Relan stood there with an unsettling calmness. His shirt slightly wrinkled, his hair windswept. Where did you go? Asked immediately. Just a walk, he said. I needed to clear my head. Relief washed through me, but suspicion lingered. Did you talk to Mira? His eyes held mine for a long, heavy moment. No, he said simply. I decided not to. I studied his face, searching for cracks, but he remained perfectly still. You don't have to worry, he continued. I realized she isn't the threat. His tone was soft, but there was something unsettling underneath it, something too calm, too controlled. Can I come in? He asked. I hesitated. Relan, I'm really tired. I need space tonight. His expression didn't change. He only tilted his head slightly. Why? Because I'm overwhelmed, I said. I need time to think. His eyes flicked to the journal in my hand. Is it because of that? My breath caught. I hadn't even realized he could see it. Give it to me, he said quietly, extending his hand. It's not safe for you to have. I stepped back instinctively. Why isn't it safe? He remained at the door, but something in his posture had sharpened. His shoulders straighter, his gaze colder. Because you don't understand what's written in there, he said. You'll only confuse yourself. You always misunderstand my intentions. Your intentions. I repeated. You wrote things that aren't true. Not true to you, he corrected. But true to us. Fear tightened around my ribs. Relan, I'm not giving you this journal. His eyes narrowed, but he stayed perfectly still. You're making a mistake, he whispered. You're letting your fear guide you instead of me. I need to think for myself, I said. I can't keep depending on you for everything. His jaw clenched, almost imperceptibly. You think you can stand alone, he murmured. But you can't. You shake when you're scared. You forget things when you panic. You fall apart without me. That's not true, I whispered, though uncertainty twisted inside me. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. If it wasn't true, you wouldn't be trembling right now. His words wrapped around me like chains. Let me in, he said. So we can fix this. We can fix you. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was exhaustion or fear, or the fragile piece of myself that still remembered life before him. No, I said quietly. The word felt foreign. Rylin blinked as if he hadn't heard right. What? I said no, I repeated louder this time. I'm not letting you in. The hallway light flickered above him, casting shadows across his face. For the first time, I saw something like disbelief in his expression, something raw and unfiltered. You're choosing her influence, he said slowly. You're letting her poison everything. I'm choosing myself, I said. His lips twitched into something like a smile, but there was no warmth in it. You think you have a self without me, he whispered. You think that's real. I pressed the door closer to the frame. Go home, Rylin. He stared at me for a long, suffocating moment. Then he nodded once, too calmly. If that's what you want, he murmured. But remember this, you don't know what's real anymore. And without me, you never will. He stepped back. His eyes locked on mine as he slowly disappeared down the corridor. I shut the door and slid to the floor, breath shaking, heart pounding. Silence filled the apartment like smoke. I sat with my back against the door, clutching the journal and trying to steady my breathing. For the first time, I felt a strange flicker of clarity. Thin, fragile, but bright. Maybe I could escape this. Maybe I could reclaim the parts of me he had taken. I stood up and began packing a small bag. Clothes, charger, wallet. My hands moved quickly, fueled by adrenaline. I didn't know where I would go, only that I couldn't stay. As I zipped the bag, my phone buzzed. A message from Mira. Are you okay? I thought I heard something outside. My stomach dropped. Stay inside, I typed back instantly. Don't open the door for anyone. Not even me. Before I could hit send, the apartment lights flickered. Once. Then went dark. Froze. The air felt heavier. From the other side of the door came a slow, deliberate sound. Metal sliding against metal. Someone was tampering with the lock. My pulse exploded in my ears. And then a voice whispered through the darkness, soft and familiar. You shouldn't have shut me out. Rin finally entered the silent apartment, calling Lyra's name the way he always did when he hoped she had forgiven him for everything he said the night before. But the silence felt heavier than normal, almost like a warning he had ignored too many times. He walked into the bedroom and stopped when he saw the small notebook on the floor. Lyra's handwriting covering the open page, her words shaking as if they had been written in fear or exhaustion. She had written that she loved him, that she could not keep living inside the cage they built together, that she hoped he would one day understand how both of them destroyed something that could have been beautiful. Rin felt the room spin as he read the last line over and over. I am leaving in the only way you cannot pull me back. When he turned toward the balcony door, still open, curtains shifting in the wind, his breath broke in his chest. He stood there frozen, shaking, unable to move, unable to scream. In that moment, the world collapsed around him. Every lie, every manipulation, every moment of control suddenly felt like a knife he had been holding the wrong way. And the most brutal truth of all crushed him. Lyra had escaped him forever, but he would never escape her.